conditions here at the moment ourselves, so I can understand why this is a challenging habitat for corals to live in. We are getting rolled around and blown around a fair bit ourselves, so we'll try our best, but we are quite limited to where we can go.
Yeah, no, that's all right. No, that's all right. Yeah, thanks very much for that. I mean, you can see everyone's doing a great job. It does look like we're in exactly the right habitat. We need to sort of go nice and slowly in terms of, there's one of the things about these corals, they're very, very thin branching, so they can form quite big mats, which we're quite surprised about because, the only times they've ever been collected were tiny little fragments. And then on the 2007 Southern Surveyor expedition, we did a lot of work with the AUV that was on the previous Falkor trip. And there were certain sites in this exact habitat where we found that these species were really quite abundant. They form quite large mats, sort of covering several meters of seafloor. But fantastic. That's a really good view. I'm just trying to get into the big screen. Sorry, I'm still just trying to fight with Zoom on my computer here. If I
You're
can
right.
just...
We're feeling your pain,
I don't want to be in my personal meeting room. Yeah. Surely it can't be that hard to just get into Zoom and get into a meeting room.
So describe these mats, Tom, because when you talk about mats, you immediately just kind of think of algal mats, but you're talking about like a sort of a build-up of skeletons from these corals, or?
Yeah, look, what they do is they're definitely different to a sort of an algal mat or something like that. What we're really talking about, I guess, is they don't grow in we often think of stagnant corals and things as growing in big colonies, so big branching colonies and things like that. But what these guys do, they almost grow like thorn bushes. They sort of cover the ground. The branches are very thin, so generally only 1 to 2 millimeters thick. So, that's what makes them quite, I guess, another thing that makes them quite hard to see in videos and things like that. Unless you're really looking for them and you know what you're looking for, they can be quite hard to find. But they do really make these, they make these sort of, I guess, covering of the seafloor. So I'm sure to people that study algae like yourself, like it's certainly very different to a mat in that sense, or a microbial mat or something like that. But that's, I guess, the sort of thing we're looking for. And one of them, Marty, you might be familiar with. There's one species, Acropora tori halimeda. Given your expertise in halimeda, you might be familiar with that one. As I said, I think it's
I have heard of that one
twice. Yeah, I think I've been on here to try and find it.
I only know of it because Paul Muir mentioned it to me one other time to look out for it, and I've never seen it, but I have heard of it.
Yeah, we have one small piece in the museum which came from part of the Seabed Biodiversity Project, which is a big project that ran for about 10 years, sort of in the early 2000s. So that was from the Swain Reefs. And then there's another one, Acropora cardinale, which was described in 1985, named after Carden Wallace, from Bowl Reef. So here we are. Let's try and find it.
Yeah.
So I'm got Zoom going on my computer now. It seems to be working. So it'd be possible to get that. Maybe if the meeting host can let me in, and hopefully I'll be able to see a little bit better. We seem to have some issues with YouTube.
We go.
Sorry, Tom. Yeah, we've been floating around here and trying to hold our position for a little while you've been sorting out your Zoom and what have you there. We've just been looking at very small, very light coloured, sort of white, very thinly, delicately branched something. waiting for you to get your screen organised and what have you, so that you can take a look at it and tell us whether this is even remotely looking like anything like what you're looking for.
Sorry, I'm here again now. Sorry, did we miss all that? Okay, I'm back now.
Getting a lot of feedback, Tom. You need to have one device on. So if you're using your computer now, you need to turn your phone off.
As if I... Okay.
How are you going there, Tom? I need you to be unmuted on one device and one device only.
Okay, I've just got off my phone. So can you guys hear me now, Marty?
I can hear you quite clearly now, Tom, without any echo. It sounding quite good.
Okay.
Part of the world.
Fantastic.
This is Schmidt Ocean Institute Research Vessel Falkor and ROV SuBastian, and we are live from.
Tom, are you playing something from YouTube?
Possibly, yeah. That would be me trying to get the YouTube feed. So I just got higher resolution on the YouTube feed. So. All right, I'm going to have to rely not on the phone and entirely on the live feed. Can you guys just let me know if the YouTube is back up and if that does fly again? Just because it seems to be slightly higher resolution. So trying to have a look for these small things, it's probably easier. Yeah. Okay. Okay, sorry. Okay, no, look, that's okay. Sorry, I'll probably just use the computer. The sound is better without it, but I'm having a few issues with the feedback. Should we? Sorry, I'm just talking to Marine Tech here. Should we try again? Hang on. Okay. Trying again, sorry. Oh, problems with live TV.
Tom, we're heating up here a little bit. We're just going to go for a little fly around, cool down a little bit, and then we'll come back down and zoom back in again and try and find some cool things.
Okay, you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly, Tom.
Excellent. And we're muted and we're not getting feedback?
It sounds very clear. It's good.
Fantastic. We got there eventually. Amazing.
Yep.
Okay. So Zoom's still trying to unmute me, but we'll get there. I don't want to see me. I want to see the live feed, please. Sorry. Is the YouTube working at all?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I'll try and get that. Yeah, it's one problem, I guess, trying to find these very small, difficult to see corals. Yeah, we need the best possible resolution. So the YouTube seems to be that. Yeah, sorry. So I think you guys missed out on my on what we were speaking about. So is there a link to I can't find sorry, it's not working on the YouTube at the moment. Is there a link we can update? Come on. I also need to, all I can see. There we go. Okay. All right. Okay, so it wasn't working on the Schmidt website, but it is working on the thing. Okay, fantastic. All right. So we're looking at these little genticulated little algae, these little white things you were mentioning before.
Yeah, this little white
Marty?
delicate thing. Yeah. Is that an algae? Oh, geniculate.
I think so. Whatever it is, it would actually be really cool to collect it because it's not a coral. So I'm pretty sure the corals that we're looking for tend to be, I guess, a fairly light brown, fairly typical of what you'd expect of corals. But whatever that is, those sorts of things are really common in this habitat. I remember from all the AUV images I worked on when I was doing my PhD. And I was never quite sure what it was. So it would be really interesting to, if it is easy to suck it up, to grab something like that.
Okay, give us a minute to just settle here and get steady. And then we'll see if we can collect this teeny tiny little thing.
Fantastic, thank you. See, it's probably unattached, so even if you might be able to suck it up, you might crush it in the claw. We have the sucking thing. Oh, well done.
Oh yeah, there it is. It's still there.
Yeah, it is possible. I was wondering whether it may be some sort of like really fine Leptocerus or something like that, or Ceratopora maybe. It doesn't really look like it from there, but yeah, look, I'm super interested to see what it might be. So those sorts of things are very common down here. So well done.
Okay.
So yeah, look, we should be at about the perfect depth for these corals. I did see some corals before when we were having a look around, some of these Leptocerus and things like that. So perhaps it'd be really good just to have a sort of, go almost along the depth contour and see what we can see.
Rightio.
So yeah, no, look, it's interesting even just looking at this. It's a little bit of a different habitat to, one of my main study sites in my PhD was a little further south at Hydrographer's Passage and then down off Viper Reef, just a little south of here. And we found that down at that sort of 50 to 70 metre depth, there was really huge fields of quite dense halimeda. And we were out there about the same time as this, but we can obviously see a lot of halimeda flakes in the sediment here, but not a lot of living halimeda. Nowhere near what we saw just a little further south.
Yep, lots of flakes in the sediment, but yeah, you wouldn't call this a carpet or a meadow of halimeda at all by any stretch.
No, absolutely not. But so just south of here, it certainly was. So is that, Marty, do you think that's likely? Is that because it's ephemeral or is that just a different spot? Or
we don't really know, Tom. Yeah, we hear different reports from various people over the years that have scuba dived on the halimeda biohomes in different places, and I've had them described to me as being lush like a rainforest with a canopy and subcanopy and, kind of wall-to-wall halometer meadow as far as the eye can see. And then others have described it as just being a white desert. So that indicates some sort of ephemeral boom-bust kind of cyclical growth thing going on. We don't really know. We need to put some long-term cameras down and leave them out for a year and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, look, that's one of the really interesting things about a lot of this work, isn't it? That there's really, turn my computer around so you can look at me looking intently at the screen. All these habitats, we just know so little about them, and it's like constantly say that this is more than 90% of the marine park of these are not shallow reefs. So understanding what's going on here is probably really important, but we just have no idea. So I guess that's it's really exciting. That's why it's great to have the Falkor, especially for the amount of time we've been able to have this time. It's been really, really interesting. So look, just looking, this is getting to exactly the right sort of habitat. Can we get any closer to the seafloor and try and have a bit of a look? We sort of go over these sorts of things a little bit.
We're pretty maxed out at the moment, Tom.
Kind of at the top of this. Okay, sorry, and that's in terms of.
In terms of getting any closer down to the seabed.
Okay, all right. Yeah, it looks like we're in exactly the right sort of habitat to find these things.
Tom, earlier on, just before you came on, we saw a couple of fungia at around about 75-ish metres. Have you seen them at that depth before?
Yes, we do see them out here. So one of these corals we were looking for has actually said that it was that when they were originally, the Acropora was originally collected, in the dredge with it were some fungids, what was Dioceras, now a Cycloceras, and also some Leptoceras as well. And on the last trip, it was really interesting, those deep Leptoceras fields that we were surveying. So down to about well over 100 metres, down to definitely predominantly Leptoceras. But looking closely at some of the images that we collected, there were definitely a number of different species of fungids there as well. So that was really interesting, and clearly, well over 100 metres depth. So they're obviously pretty good at living in this really deep water. This is fantastic now, so really good, perfect, sort of altitude and things for the ROV. So hopefully we can find some stuff we're looking for. So these are, I guess, it's almost a rhodolith field here, isn't it?
Yeah, it does have that look about it. It looks, I don't know, not quite as organised or rounded as spherical as a rhodolith bed. It kind of looks more like rubbly that then just has a red algal crust on top of it. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So let's see what we can find. So, as you guys can see, there's a lot of algae and things here. It's obviously not it's certainly by no means a coral-dominated system.
No, not at all.
But one of the, sometimes even at these depths, 70 metres, we saw in the Coral Sea, 70, 80, 90 metres, where you saw some, very much coral-dominated ecosystems in this sort of habitat. And even at Myrmidon Reef, just north of here, there previously had been some similar reefs out there, again dominated by mainly Leptoceras, but also some other taxa, so Pachyceras and things. But I haven't been able to find them again in the last sort of 10 years or so. So there was a submarine that went down. Terry Doan, who used to be at AIMS, was one of my PhD supervisors, some of you may know. David Hopley as well, and Peter Davies, who was JD's supervisor, did some submarine dives in the early 1980s. And they found some of these Leptoceras fields just near here, but certainly not something I've seen in recent times.
What is that?
Yeah, where's that bright
Top
green
right.
thing there? Oh, that's a goniopora.
Ah,
So that's I mean, that's interesting in itself. Actually, can we just zoom in on that for a sec? I think it's a goniopora. Could be an alveopora. No, it looks like a goniopora. Never easy to count. The difference between the two groups is basically you have to count the number of tentacles, so whether they have 12 or 24 in each polyp.
we've been doing our fair share of
excellent.
tentacle
So,
counting already today.
Yeah. So not an easy thing to do, but yeah, okay. That's exactly the sort of this sort of coral is exactly what I'd expect to see in this kind of habitat. These guys are also quite common in a lot of turbid inshore ones. So yeah, the Leptocerus fields, the Halimeda meadows just south of here, we did see that was probably the most common coral in that sort of environment. So no, we can keep going. We can probably leave him alone. But yeah, that's interesting to see it here. Again, that gives us a clue that we're in exactly the right sort of habitat. Just trying to see what else is in there. Just trying to keep an eye out for some branching sort of things. Or maybe, okay, going a bit fast. Sea star on the right. So yeah, it looks like another goniopora. So I'm probably a little bit behind just looking at the YouTube feed. Try and make sure it's clear, but yeah, see a couple more of these gonioperas in here.
All right, we'll keep panning around a little bit.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. There's another one on the left there. Yeah, fantastic. This is really a perfect way to search. I don't think we're going to get a better opportunity than this to try and find some of these things. But, yeah, they prove very elusive. I guess that's when you live in these sorts of habitats. It's what you expect. It's not like you can just go diving and collect them like we do for a lot of other corals. Very, very challenging environment to work in. Still seeing some Halimeda and things like that around. And I think that white that's one of the things that we've...
It's the same thing that we just collected before?
Yeah, same thing that we saw before. Yeah, so some of the sites, particularly up around Noggin Pass, I think it was, that white thing stuff was really common. Also down at Hydrographer's Passage, there was a lot of it. There's a fungid there going over. So there's some fungids around. So more gonioperas. We can start to see actually a fair few gonioperas around here, forming some fairly large, for this sort of depth anyway, fairly large colonies. Can form pretty extensive colonies, but you can see lots and lots of these little patches of goniopera in here. So, okay, there's something branching, but that looks pretty soft. Yeah, no, I think that's an octocoral. It might be one of Jeremy's black corals. Zoom in there. Yeah, no, that looks like an octocoral to me. Jeremy will probably be getting upset because it's probably a black coral, but...
Jeremy had plenty of time this morning. It's your turn now.
He did. No, he did. Yeah, no, I'm saying he's established a very good collection from the Coral Sea. So, yeah, no, I was sort of hoping that we might find some of these corals that in some of those Coral Sea dives. We're definitely in the right habitat for them.
Yeah.
But
Tom,
again, we just
have to manoeuvre around a little bit here, just our position relative to the ship. So just bear with us for a little sec.
Yeah, no problem.
Then we'll duck it back down.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, it's you know, I sort of these species have only really ever been recorded from the Great Barrier Reef and from this sort of area of the Central Great Barrier Reef. You know, it's quite possible they occur in other places as well. We just haven't found them yet. But yeah, 2 species collected from here and another similar one from northwestern Australia, which has also been found in Indonesia. But yeah, these guys we've never found them anywhere else, and I sort of thought through looking at the Coral Sea vision. I was hoping that we might be able to find some of them at some of those sites, but yeah, didn't see any. So whether that's just that they don't occur in the Coral Sea, or we just didn't come across them, who knows? But anyway, very interesting to see. There is, not a lot of coral, but certainly interesting ones in these sorts of habitats. It's surveying these areas that no one's ever really surveyed, at least not very often, always turns up interesting things. So really exciting to see a lot of this area. But yeah,
we certainly
really
saw a lot in the
this.
Coral Sea. There was a lot of diversity there. We must have seen just about everything but. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, no, there was some stunning dives there, and interesting as well. Again, being quite challenging habitats to dive on. There's been a reasonable amount of work in some reefs in the Coral Sea, but again, tends to be on quite steep walls because they're the places you can dive on. So going on these gentler slopes really showed us, that there was some very diverse range of habitats out in the Coral Sea, and we really hadn't had a look over a lot of these sorts of habitats. So finding so much diversity in the Coral Sea and that sort of mesophotic depth was really interesting. So yeah, there'll be a lot of works to do coming out of the data that we've already collected from the Falkor over the last few months. Some of that's already commenced, as you know, but there'll be a lot more to do. Yeah, hopefully we can now find a little bit more about the GBR. This habitat's looking absolutely perfect. So let's see what we can find.
Do you want to give us a description of really sort of what's your top target? What are we really looking for here, Tom? So the pilots have got an idea.
Oh, there's a small white branching one.
Yeah. Look at this.
Yeah, so it's getting very close. That looks like Seriatopera. Would it be possible can we grab a bit of that? Might well be a Seriatopera, or it might be one of these algae as well. Yeah, so what we're looking for, I guess, if you imagine, I don't know if you guys have ever seen, staghorn corals growing in turbid lagoons. So if you're in, quite shallow but very, very calm bays in places like the Palm Islands, you see a lot of it in places like Indonesia and Papua New Guinea, where you get these big stands of these very, very finely branched staghorn corals. So they're, incredibly, very delicate. So I guess like this one's a bit more, from what I can see here, looks a bit more like more of a bird's nest. They're not quite as densely branching as this, and tend to be more of a sort of a brown, light brown colour. But if you see them, if you think of these ones in places like Indonesia and New Guinea, in these really calm bays, these big long staghorns, and then if you imagine that someone's just smashed them up and just kind of left them very sparsely scattered across the seafloor. That's really what we're looking for. So very, very thinly branched, and they really don't they really don't look like much to the eye. They're quite different. Even people that are used to looking at corals and surveying corals in shallow water would probably very easily glance over them. So yeah, there we go. All this stuff, as you can see, is incredibly thin and delicate, which makes it a little.
How much do you really want this, Tom? Is it a high priority?
Yeah, no, that's all right. I am interested to know what it is, but if it's going to be difficult, we don't have the sucking thing.
All right, we've just grabbed a bit, and then we're going to have to move.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, no, that's all right.
Sorry, we just had to move very quickly.
That's okay. So yeah, this is to do with the currents and making sure we don't get tangled up in anything.
Yeah, just our position relative to the ship and our umbilical, and floats on the surface, and it's all going on out there.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's quite the mission. Trying to manoeuvre, this sort of vehicle, and it's, as you say, it's not easy. It's been horrible weather in Townsville for the last few days, so I can imagine it's pretty bumpy out there at the moment. All right, now we're really getting into this habitat. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, the weather out here hasn't been too bad actually. It's not too bad. It could be a lot worse. A little bit of swell, but it's mainly these currents that are washing us around.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you can see we've sort of got into this slightly different habitat here. So we'll have a bit of a look around. It sort of seems to transition from quite rocky and bouldery through to quite sandy.
Yeah.
So let's just have a bit of a look over this sand and see what we can see. I have noticed before from looking at towed video and AUV and stuff, they do seem to be occurring quite specific habitats. So it'll be interesting just to be able to see what we can find out here. You would think, living in sort of rubbly stuff, that it would just live in a specific spot, but it really is quite. They seem to be, you discover patches where there's lots of them, and then nothing for a while. So I have to keep on the lookout. As you can imagine as well, it's very hard to collect them in dredges and things like that as well. Because they are so delicate and so fine. So even if we're going over the right habitat, we're often, smashing up these really delicate fine corals. So it's been really difficult to try and catch them. Thanks again, guys. That's looking fantastic.
Yep, we're just trying to rescue an escapee of something we collected earlier. If we lose this, Jeremy will really not be happy.
There we go.
There we go. Phew, thank goodness.
Oh, we've got an incredible collection of black corals now.
Yeah, it sounds amazing.
After these trips. So I've seen them. They're all in the museum now, safely locked away in the Museum of Tropical Queensland in Townsville. So Jeremy brought them all in after the last trip. So it's been really exciting to see all the stuff that's been collected. And for a group like that, that's pretty poorly known. Everyone's very excited about what we can find, what we might find.
That's excellent.
Yeah, undoubtedly there's huge numbers of new species and things like that. So very exciting. All right, let's just cruise along.
Zooming in here. That. There we go. Oh yeah, Jeremy's watching. Hi, Jeremy.
Yeah, no, that's a coral, crustose coral and algae, I'd say.
Okay. Yep.
So the things we're looking at, they're bigger. So the branches will often be, you might be looking at branches that are, 30, 40, 50 centimetres long. Sometimes a colony can get several metres across. And maybe, but very thin. So you're talking about, only a couple millimetres thick, but quite long, and they won't be sticking up off the seafloor. They'll be usually lying on the bottom. And, maybe if you've got branches, 20, 30, 40 centimetres, sometimes longer, and every 10, 20 centimetres or so, you might see a branch coming off to the side. So often they'll branch at right angles, pretty close. So I guess that's sort of the rough idea of what we're looking for, usually light brown. So they do look somewhat like a staghorn coral, I guess. But yeah, very much something that is, it's just hard to see because they are very inconspicuous because they are so thin and not even quite camouflaged, but just it's a very, very unusual sort of habit for I guess for staghorn corals. We think about them as really being the tables and plates and the things that really dominate reefs. Yeah, well, look at that. Can we just? That's right. Actually, keep going. So yeah, to have this sort of group that does this sort of thing, that lives in deep water and just sort of sprawls across the rubbly bottom, it's very unusual for the group. And so until we can sample it and sequence it, we really don't have any idea. Is this a really old lineage? Is this what they do? Is it just a group that's specialised to do something weird? Did staghorn corals start out doing this and then later sort of evolve to dominate reefs the way they do? We really don't know. So anyway, hopefully we can find some and we can work it out. Meters, yeah. So, well, it must be a little too reefy here. We want this really sort of rubbly, sandy sort of habitat. Something that we're really looking for. Sort of mixed rubble, sandy. There we go. So it's looking pretty good. I can see at the sort of top left of screen, it looks like there's sort of a sandy patch up there.
Okay. Want us to head up there?
Yeah, if that's all right. Is that a bottom of a reef up there? Probably is, isn't it? Bottom of one of these fossil reefs. Does it get quite steep at the end of that sand? It looks like it does. Is that just
it is looking like that.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is looks like one of these ground reefs
type of thing. We'll just
this
nudge our
looks
way
like one of these
carefully
ground
towards
reefs.
there.
Wow. Yeah. No. Beautiful. Can we just have a look? I guess right at the edge of where this kind of rubble turns into this sand before we get to the reef.
Yeah. The edge of between the rubble and the sand.
Yeah, just
what you
along
said?
the edge of the rubble and the sand is probably where.
Okay, we'll have a look there now.
Okay. So this reef up here looks, I know it's not quite what we're looking for, but is really interesting as well. So this was, my PhD was on these fossil reefs. So these are these reefs that grew in lower sea levels, and we did a big trip in 2007 on the Southern Surveyor, which was, looked very fancy at the time, but compared to what we can see and do on the Falkor now, so it was looking a bit rudimentary. But yeah, these reefs are reefs that grew at lower sea levels, and so there was a lot of interest from Jody and others on the significance of these reefs for understanding sea level rise and the response of reefs on the Great Barrier Reef to sea level changes over time. My PhD was largely focused on the biology, so trying to understand what was living on these reefs now. No one had ever really searched them, so trying to understand a little bit more about what these reefs, what lives on them now. And so it's really interesting. I guess we had some AUV footage and stuff, but to be able to see them, live here more or less in person, as much as you can, is really interesting. It's a beautiful big reef. So if we can just sort of have a look around. This is exactly the sort of habitat I'd expect to find them in. looks like a beautiful big cropper sitting up on that bommy, completely different to the, in the sort of top left.
Did you want us to zoom in and have a look at that? We all just kind of spotted that at the same time.
Yeah, please. Yeah. Have a look. It's completely different to the ones we're looking for, but very sort of typical of, I guess, what we're looking for. We got a few very nice colonies of these sorts of things. There we go. Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, no, that's Copra speciosa or something like that. We got some beautiful colonies like this on the previous trip, so I'm about to send them away for sequencing.
Great. Okay, we'll keep having a look around.
Beautiful. Yeah, we'll keep having a look around on the rubble. I won't get distracted by all the stuff that. I guess that specimen there is a beautiful big colony, but I guess that's pretty typical of the sort of specimens we'd expect in this part of this sort of habitat, like these sort of depths. So really quite beautiful. We can move down, I guess, towards the sand a little more. Sort of not quite on the reef, but kind of on the rubble, just off the bottom of the reef. Just maybe like just like a couple of meters further back towards there we go. Yeah, just sort of in this sandy, rubbly area, if we can have a bit of a look going across here, this is really the sort of habitat, I guess, I'd expect to find these things. So let's have a good look along this area. Do my best with the vision we've got from here. So, okay, just looking up at that map, so that's where we are. Fantastic. Wow. So you can see on that on the YouTube, we've got the map up. So the reef off the edge of the shelf there is Myrmidon, I was mentioning earlier. It's a very unusual reef for the Central Great Barrier Reef, in that it's set back from the shelf edge. There's a fairly big gap. It's almost like a chunk of the shelf that almost fell off but didn't quite. So yeah, really interesting spot out of Myrmidon.
Tom, we've got a little less than half an hour to go, so we'll just keep browsing around here for the time being. And 20 minutes?
Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
15, 20 minutes. About 20 minutes.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Well, let's spend this time really hunting for these things. So we're in the perfect habitat. Probably don't want to get too close to the reef because you will then have debris coming down and smashing up these things. So
okay. But
just maybe sort of 5-10 meters off the back of the reef, and you'll just you can do a little sort of a transit. That's perfect, that view that I've got now, and a little sort of a transit just just going along the bottom of this reef. This is probably exactly the sort of habitat that we're after. This looks great. So come on, fingers crossed.
You know, it all always happens in the last 5 minutes.
Indeed. Indeed, yeah. So, where are you, corals? Come on. So maybe we need to, it's like fishing, you need to distract yourself by talking about something else. So I saw the Swain slide was looked really interesting. It's a big slide.
Oh, it was fantastic. The mapping that we managed to finish at Swain Slide, it came up really spectacular. So I think the run out was about 20 k's out and 10 k's across. Beautiful high resolution multi-beam bathymetry mapping that we got at Swain Slide, and we managed to take it right up to the edge of the reef where we've now met up with the lidar on the shallow part of the reef. So, yeah, that was really spectacular.
Yeah, fantastic. Do we have any idea yet how old that is or when that might have happened?
I don't think we do. No. We didn't manage to dive there.
Yeah, wow. So where's the start of the scarp face? It looks like it's pretty shallow. So, it could have even been the landslide, I guess, before it was submerged. Is that right? I mean, if it's at lower sea level stands?
Sorry, Tom, I was momentarily distracted. Yeah, there we go. We're looking at this thing here that's moving.
Yeah, me too. Shiny object. Can we just...
Squirrel.
So, is it possible to move just down a little bit away from the reef? I think we're just a little bit too close to the reef here. Some beautiful soft corals and things.
We're about 10 metres away from the edge of that reef where we are at the moment,
all right.
Tom. Yeah.
Okay. Some beautiful soft corals growing on these bommies, but I think we're getting pretty close to the right habitat. All right, let's keep going then. Yeah, sorry, Matty, I was just saying that, perhaps it was a scarp that, would it, if at lower sea levels, might have actually been a landslide that fell into the sea. Is that possible?
Yeah. The Swain slide was interesting. It looks like there's a really sharp scarp, like a slope failure off the reef itself. You can see the sort of indentation, the bite mark off the reef. But then to the edge of that, it looks like there's also been a landslide sort of off to the edge of it. It's more out in the sediment rather than the edge of the reef. Yeah, it was interesting. So a bit hard to say whether it was all in one event or whether more than one event or one led to the other. Yeah, I guess once we really have a good look at that data and do some measurements and things, we'll be able to get a bit more of a picture of what was going on there.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, it could have been could have caused a lot of trouble when that happened.
Yeah, you can imagine the amount of energy that would have been released in that event, or yeah, I'm pretty sure it would have caused some grief for something or someone somewhere.
Yeah, indeed. Absolutely, it's quite impressive. Some beautiful sponges here. There's a large fish in the background too. Be interesting to know. We did collect a lot of sponges on the Southern Surveyor trip, but I didn't spend a lot of time. Didn't do the taxonomic work as in anywhere near as much detail as I did for the scleractinia and the octocorals as well.
We followed along the edge of your Southern Surveyor track on our way up here. We edge mapped along the edge of it.
Yeah, I saw that. No, it's great. I mean, having more and more, it's the ability to fill in the multi-beam of what's been going on has been amazing in all these trips, really. Well, this is a full-on reef just up here. Sorry, I'm getting distracted again, Marty, by the by the corals, or by the habitat anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's really interesting.
Yeah, it very much looks like these, I guess, not quite spurs and grooves, but gullies and buttresses, and that's really important for mesophotic corals because, especially at this depth, because there's not much wave energy. If you have a very sort of solid reef wall, we tend to not really see much in terms of coral growth because they just get smothered by sediment. Whereas if you have those really big buttresses, you can really start to see, the corals really dominate the buttresses, and then the sediment sort of moves down through the gullies, and that really allows there to be high coral growth in some of these places. So a lot of the time it seems to be the morphology and its effect on sedimentation that influences coral abundance at these depths more so than, you know, everyone sort of thinks it's light because they're photosynthetic, but sediments are really, and sedimentation is a really important control, particularly in these waters out here that are really super clear. Is it possible we can just move? I guess I was just looking down at the footage before, and there was sort of in the sandy area, but there was a bit more rubble just slightly deeper. Just if we can see now, just kind of to the right of you, I think.
Okay, we'll just move around a little bit. Just to let you know, Tom, if you're watching the vision through your YouTube feed, you're about at least half a minute or so behind us.
Okay, yeah, no, I've got both up. I'm watching the YouTube while I try to look up close and then have a look at the big one. Yeah, so pretty much straight down there. That looks like where we want to be, if that's possible. Big soft coral sticking up there, so it's obviously an area that gets a bit of current. So yeah, this sort of habitat here, we're in this sort of algae, rubbly, sandy bit. If we can just get nice and close. I just keep thinking that, you know, we probably just keep going over them and not seeing them, but hopefully that's not the case.
There's lots of pairs of eyes here that are looking out for them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they're very sort of difficult to see until you got your eye in for them, I guess. It's one of the real tricky things. But it's, yeah, I've seen that before where you sort of, oh, there's not much there, and especially if there's things like an ROV where you've got high resolution cameras, but you know, you get that back at the end and you see all these things that you couldn't see in the live feed. You're just like, oh, you know, I've seen a lot of it through, you know, doing tow video and stuff where you sort of do the live stuff through tow video, and it gives you a very good idea of the habitat and things, but then you get the downward looking camera images back and you go, oh wow, look at all that stuff.
All that stuff that you missed.
Yeah. So the currents that are going on here, I guess is that the EAC sort of thing going on?
Yeah, pretty much.
The primary driver of the current? Yeah, right.
Yeah, yep. Our main current at the moment, it's changing a bit, but our main current is the one running from north to south.
Okay. All right, here we go. This is looking pretty good. There's something. What's that? All right. Can we just sort of just zoom right in on, like, just almost sit on the seafloor and just have a look in here for a minute? There's just a few things that are pretty interesting around here.
This might be our final little look around here, Tom.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Okay, so that's the soft coral there. No, not that thing, sorry, not the blue one. Going around some crinoids. Can we pan to the right a little? A few interesting looking things going on over there. No, can't see anything there.
A nice Ascidian.
Certainly is. Few interesting things. Another little sort of a soft coral pulsing away there. Probably Amphilia, that one. That's quite common at these sort of mesophotic depths. We're seeing a lot of these sorts of things that we've collected in the past, so that the common ones are certainly around. They're seeing a lot of the more common things we expect to see. just can't quite find the specialty things. It looks like there's another acropora potentially sitting just to the right of the vehicle. So just to the right of where the camera is now, it's kind of sitting up on a pedestal a little.
Do we need to zoom out a little bit to see that?
From where we are now, we do, yes. I could see it in the footage before. Yep, there it is. So just on the right there.
Yep.
Ooh. Say that. Yeah, wow. And so that looks pretty interesting. I'm not quite sure what it is, but perhaps we should. If we have to start to shuffle off, would it be possible to grab this and that?
So you're interested in that acropora that we were just looking at?
Yeah.
And just a piece of it?
That's possible.
Just whatever we can grab?
Yeah, if that's all right. Yeah, if that's all right. It should be pretty fragile, so it shouldn't be too hard to snap
Okay.
off.
We'll try.
I think it's an acropora. Could be anything.
Grab and go. This is going to be a grab and go, Tom.
Yeah, sure.
Great shaft, comp check.
There we go. Got him. Spoke too soon. Well done. Excellent work, guys.
No problem.
Thank you very much. All right, so I gather that's probably the end of the show.
Yeah, I think we might have to call it.
No encore.
Not today. Maybe another day.
Yeah, no, fair enough. All right, no, well, thank you very much for that, guys. Thanks for.
Thanks very much for joining us, Tom.
Got a few interesting things.
Yeah.
No, thank you. It's super interesting. It's really nice to get the opportunity to see some of these habitats like this. Super interesting.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch, obviously, and we'll chat about what the dive plans are for the coming couple of weeks and any other sites that might be potentially of interest for you. We'll keep you in the loop.
Indeed. No, thank you very much for that. And thanks very much to the Falkor guys and the ROV techs. You know, incredibly challenging conditions, no doubt. So, yeah, it's amazing that you guys can just collect this stuff so effectively.
Okay, so that's us for today. We're going to end the dive here, and that'll be the end of the live feed. So I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. This is Schmidt Ocean Institute, RV Falkor and ROV SuBastian signing off for today. And we'll hopefully dive again in a few more days. Thank you for joining us.
So, thank you.